Do you love Ultra Magnus or are you not American? I mean, that question might not be as rhetorical as I meant it, because only 30% of my audience hails from Hamburger Land, anyways. But what I was trying to get at is that Ultra Magnus is the most patriotic looking giant Japanese robot ever. Never mind that he has the personality of Sam the Eagle. Heads up, this newest iteration of the big bureaucrat is just about perfect. Just about perfect to me, of course, and in my opinion, is the only one that really matters given that, well, just it is. Studio Series 86 21 Ultra Magnus is near the perfect example of how a toy might not be 100% accurate or perfect to the screen, but it just so effortlessly captures the essence of the character. Like, for example, this toy is certainly too big for how Ultra Magnus was in the cartoon and movie. As we all know, G1 scaling is less consistent than a broken metronome, but even by those standards, he still seems way too large. Ultra Magnus was always a giant wall of a robot, but he certainly was not this much bigger than Galvatron. It feels like a non issue, however, just because this toy feels like how an Ultra Magnus should feel. He's really heavy, he's massive, he's tight, steady, and stalwart. This toy is no nonsense in the same way that the character is, and that's what makes it great. It's larger than life in the unique way that Ultra Magnus is. Certainly not an animated personality, but unmistakably memorable and large. The detail on him is unprecedented. Everything is perfect, there's not a diode out of place. There's just enough panel lines and vents and such to make him look convincingly like a big functional robot, but not too much as to make him not animation accurate. At first, I had trouble posing him, because his big, weird, unwieldy proportions make lots of poses look unnatural. But then I looked at it again from another angle. Yeah, duh. Of course Ultra Magnus looks weird in an action pose, he's Ultra Magnus. He'd be excited to lecture someone on how to properly use APA style on a research essay, not shoot a gun. These knee joints are basically just for show, because there's really no need to use them. His feet have really good ankle tiltage, but can't rock back and forth worth a lick of salt, so you can't pose him in some grand action pose that easily. But then again, standing there looking stoic is more his thing anyways, so just stick to that. There is an amazing amount of range in the shoulder, even if it sometimes looks weird. Really appreciate the finger articulation. That really is one of the most crucial joints in bringing the character to a figure. A small problem worth mentioning is how the arm doesn't hold into the shoulder well. The arm does some wild flipping around and transformation that we'll get to later, and the joint necessary for that doesn't hold in place well at all. What it means is that sometimes when you go to bend his elbow, you'll accidentally just slide the whole arm out of the shoulder socket. These shoulder missile pods are removable, and even the little red missile heads themselves. If you think that's pronounced missile, you can shove one up your butt. I really like the look of them with the included blast effects. It comes with a very nice use of the Omega Supreme blast effects repainted to be a bit more smoky. He's also got two different blasters, both coated with the most gorgeous iridescent paint. They can both store on his back, the bigger one taps into his butt, and the smaller one just straight on the back. I love the inclusion of the little circle and details from his animation sheet. That's adorable. The only thing really actually bothersome to me in his robot mode is the head. The sculpt is perfect and the light piping is to die for, but just his whole head is way too small. It doesn't help the situation either that he has zero neck. It looks downright silly when you have him at eye level on your shelf and you can't see his face because his chest is just too dang big. Speaking of his big old chesticles, you can open them up and reveal the best looking Matrix chamber ever. This interior is painted so well, and I really enjoy the spring-loaded doors. It feels so close to being a gimmick from an older mid-2010s Transformer figure. The only thing that could improve this would be if there were lights and sounds along with it. Well, another improvement could be that the Matrix included is just way too darn tiny. It looked fine in the hands of Hot Rod, but here in the massive mitts of Magnus, it looks even sillier than the bauble just looks by itself. This is the best version of that specific Matrix accessory that I've seen so far. The paint really shines in a great way. but it's seriously way too small. Comically undersized, even. Of course, there was a new Matrix released with the G2 Prime mold, and yep, that one was even smaller. I'm sure there are some people that are mad that this toy can't do the whole inner white Prime shindig, and to those people, I do really sincerely empathize and suggest that you get on with your life. Kingdom Magnus does the inner white Prime thing and severely suffers from it. Neither of his three modes are fun or look good. And I'm not trying to demonize that old toy now that a new one has come along and replaced it. I certainly don't have to justify a new purchase by claiming that I never liked the old one anyway. I'm just here to say that Siege Ultra Magnus and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. One last thing about robot mode I nearly forgot to mention is that he can come apart. Now that I've mentioned it, we can all agree that it's weird and that we don't like it. Take a deep breath, wipe that snot off your lip, we're moving on. Magnus's transformation is wildly silly and fun, near the polar opposite of everything the character believes in and fights for. Any transformation that has a step that ends up in something like this has to be an all-timer. Besides the spaghetti arms, the extreme tightness and clickiness of his joints makes it a joy. The truck mode is so perfect. The oversized robot mode is so worth it if that's what they needed to get the car carrier this big. Magnus is one of the few Transformers that instead of compacting during transformation from robot to vehicle actually gets bigger, which is still such an impressive feat of engineering even here. He is a car carrier, if you couldn't tell. This is what those vehicles used to look like back in 2005. You can kind of fit some other cars on the bed. There's no real spots for wheels to lock in place, which might be the only thing Kingdom Magnus did better. There's a ramp at the back, and the top can be lowered to give cars access to drive up. The guns from robot mode can be stored on the top of the carrier, but it makes everything look weird. Please, don't do it. He really just looks so perfect in this form, and the colors really shine even better than they did in robot mode. I did really have to double check. I was so surprised to see the red bumper, because that did not seem right. I think I and many others collectively Mandela affected him having a silver bumper, but no, it was always red. I'm completely in awe of how Hashtag managed to engineer an Ultra Magnus that converts into a truck mode with a working hitch and doesn't have to come apart at all to do so. If he could roll a little better, I'd take that, but he's still extremely impressive. Ultimately, Commander Class still continues to crank out bangin' toys and again proves itself as the undisputed best size class. Consistently, the most bang for your buck is going to be a Commander Class. They're just always so fun. Ultra Magnus may be on the slightly smaller size, but he more than makes up for it in quality and seriousness. Love this dude and love you guys. Peace out.